Let's go check it out.
Welcome to Survive and Advance on the Grizzly True Sports Network. Survive and Advance is, the greatest show God ever created. Because I'm your co-host, Mike Goodpaster, and of course our co-host is Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
Where did that come from?
I don't know. It just pops into my head.
Did you just not feel like doing the introduction today? I mean, my
I did
God.
do the introduction. I just said I'm your co-host, Mike Goodpaster. Now here's my co-host, Steve Risley.
Welcome to Survive. Now what you're sounding like is Mike Krzyzewski and the Duke basketball team. Like you're just so freaking perfect and unbeatable, and so godlike. It's unbelievable. That was a terrible introduction.
All right, we'll let you do it next time.
You want to redo that?
No, I don't want to redo it. We're live. Jeez, all you do is pick on me. It's either I don't introduce you important enough, or I don't bring up your, that godforsaken ring you won in 1981, or I didn't do it enough. I mean, I just can't win with you. It's like I'm talking to my wife on a radio show.
Well, you can't win with your wife either?
No. I do. She doesn't know. It's kind of like me and you, where I let you think you won, I tell you you won, and then we all really know that I won.
Okay. Mike, this little thing out there, it's a saying that really makes, I've been married 34 years, but there's a reason why. It's this little thing called pick your battles.
Yeah.
So don't try and win everything.
Okay. All right. So
all right.
What do you think of college football's newest rankings?
It's predictable. It's where we thought everything would go. Everything went pretty well on schedule. Last week in the football games, fortunately, anybody skirted by with a win. We thought Michigan would move up. The whole thing seems a little biased toward the SEC. I'm sure we're going to discuss that a little bit. But are you surprised? I'm not surprised where all four teams are. I still think Notre Dame's in a precarious situation. I think Alabama's in a little bit of a precarious situation, although they're so damn good, I'm not sure it matters. Michigan's in a precarious situation because they've got to go and play Ohio State. For the Big Ten, or to qualify for the East Division of the Big Ten. So there's a lot's going to happen. I'm not sure this is going to be the Final Four at all. And I know you've got a couple theories, and I know you want to get to and talk to. So let me just turn it over to you, and let's start with your theories.
I don't know, a theory. I just have truth.
Because really, truthfully, Mike, there's a big shakeup in NASCAR this morning, and I don't really care about the college football playoffs to that great extent. I'll talk about them because it is the news of talking about right now. But I'm more concerned that Kevin Harvick lost 40 points and a race win, and is just about taking himself out of the playoffs for NASCAR. That's a little bit more concerning to me than whether any of the four of these teams make playoffs, other than Notre Dame, because I'm a big Notre Dame fan. But go ahead, start the talk.
No, if you want to talk about Kevin Harvick, that sounds really interesting to me.
No. It's not relevant. No, we tried that one time. We got 300 listeners, so
yeah,
I'm not going down that road again.
Because it's not relevant.
Nobody cares except me. You're right, exactly.
It's a bunch of men driving in circles in cars going left.
Did I just have a conversation about picking your battles? Picking my battle. Move on.
But you picked your battle by bringing it up. But LSU.
I got it out. There's nothing more to talk about.
You're still talking about it. All right. Number 7, LSU. They're number 7. They dropped from 3 to 7, getting beat 29-0. They're still ahead of Washington State. And when you look at this, LSU is the third SEC team in the rankings top 7, 2 spots behind number 5 Georgia. LSU has no chance to win its own division, let alone securing a spot in the semifinal. There's no way they can do that. They don't have enough games left. Why are they at number 7, Steve?
Well, let me ask you an important question, Mike. Let me give you a hypothetical question, okay? All right?
Yeah.
If somebody takes Kevin Harvick out on the second lap, right now, seriously, okay, we'll get serious now. If this Saturday we could control the universe and LSU played Washington State, I'll almost give you a neutral field. Who would win that game?
Washington State.
You think so?
Yeah.
Really?
From what I saw of LSU, they have no quarterback. And Washington State's going to come out in the air raid, and they're just going to blast them. They're going to score too many points. LSU won't be able to keep up. LSU, I think, is overrated. I know that maybe their best win was against Washington, but we've also found out since then that Washington wasn't that good. So, no, I don't buy that LSU is this great football team. I think Alabama could go down as one of the greatest teams we ever see, but it was 29-0. You're going to keep them ranked ahead of teams that should still have at least an outside shot at a playoff for a team that doesn't.
Okay, but ranked, who else did they lost to Florida? And is Florida still ranked or not? Or they got beat last weekend too, didn't they?
Florida's not very good. I mean, that's the thing. It looked like
all
a
right,
great resume
all right.
at the start.
I'm looking. I don't know. I think pretty much everybody's gotten beat 29-0 by Alabama because I think Alabama's just that damn good. So I don't know. I don't think really Washington State or Washington or whoever it is out there, Washington State, Moscow, Idaho. Man, I remember I worked at George Evans basketball camp at Washington State one time. Fun town. I think that the strength of schedule, I don't think Washington State's played anybody really tough. They played the Pac-10, Pac-12, whatever it's called now.
Who's LSU beat that's that good? You just gave me a bunch of teams that really weren't that good. Everybody thought they were, but they're not.
Let me look at this schedule. Well, let me look at their schedule. They beat Miami. They beat Auburn. They beat Ole Miss. They beat Georgia. And Georgia's ranked right behind them, or Georgia's ranked 5th in the rankings right now, aren't they?
Yeah.
I'd say they got a pretty good beat Mississippi State.
Okay, so
I would say their schedule's pretty
how do you
damn
think
good.
they get in a championship then?
Well, they don't, but neither does Washington State.
I don't know why the hell would you right? Yeah, do. Washington State still could. If you get a few losses
how
up
could Washington State get in?
How could they get in? They win the Pac-12, and at the same time, maybe Alabama loses to Auburn and then beats them. They get in, but Michigan could lose to Ohio State. That would drop them below them. Notre Dame could lose to Syracuse and USC.
Well, so, I think the most dangerous to fall out right now is Notre Dame. I think they're the most vulnerable team to fall out of the playoff picture right now.
I mean, come on, Steve. Look at Kentucky. Kentucky dropped from 9 to 11 after being embarrassed and shown as a championship pretender in a loss to Georgia. I mean, come on. Florida is ranked in the top 15, and they just got blown out by Missouri, which was previously a winless SEC team.
Are you just figuring out right now that there's a bias toward the SEC?
No, it's just
in this
sickening.
Football playoff thing?
I mean, I think what they got right is I think Notre Dame stayed above Michigan. Notre Dame beat Michigan. I think Michigan right now would probably beat them. They're a better team, but still, you can't ignore that. But Central Florida, this is a team I ripped on last week, but they're still undefeated, and I don't think they should be behind any two-loss teams. Not both of them, at least.
I agree.
LSU, I think LSU, with their schedule, may have a case to stay ahead of them. But, I mean, when you look at this, I just don't understand how you're going to have them behind Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky got beat by what? They beat Florida. They beat Mississippi State. And the problem with that is now Georgia. Florida, they've had a
Kentucky
huge
play Georgia?
Dive. Yeah, they got destroyed 34-17 last week. And they only dropped two spots. They lost by
Georgia.
They lost by 17 points to the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah, and Georgia's ranked 5. I mean, this is actually, I'm looking at the rankings right now. Hey, let me ask you this: do you think that can Alabama absorb one loss and stay in the top 4?
Oh yeah.
So do you think Alabama's pretty well locked to go, right?
Yeah. So the problem you get is Clemson should be pretty much clinched unless they lose to BC this week, which is probably the toughest game they've got left.
Yeah, who do they have left to play? They play BC, Duke, and South Carolina. Yeah, they're not.
Duke is a good team. South Carolina is a decent team, but they're not.
It's a rival game, isn't it? Isn't that kind of a rival game, Clemson, South Carolina?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So that rival games always weird stuff. I'm sorry, FCC. Weird stuff can happen.
There is no FCC on the internet. John Einreinhofer.
I know, but you chastised me for using that word one time before, so I'm just I'm picking my battles with you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Alabama's a lock. I don't think you're going to get them out of the top four.
When I look at
unless they lost twice.
If Georgia, what are they, 5 or 6? What are they, 5?
Yeah, I think Georgia gets in. I think Michigan or Notre Dame falters.
Georgia beat Austin Peay, South Carolina, Middle Tennessee, Missouri, Tennessee, Vanderbilt. They got blown out by LSU, and they beat Florida, who's not very good, and then they beat Kentucky. I mean, that's not an amazing schedule to play to me, and they're going to finish by playing Auburn, UMass, Georgia Tech. Now, they'll get the Alabama-Georgia game at the end, but if Georgia wins that game and Alabama wins out until then and it's a close game, they're going to put Alabama-Georgia in there, Clemson, and then it's either Notre Dame or Michigan. I don't think this. Everybody keeps saying if Notre Dame wins out, Michigan wins out, they're in. I don't think that's necessarily true.
I don't either. Not if Georgia beats Alabama. If Georgia beats Alabama, Georgia moves in. And Michigan takes the hit because Notre Dame beat Michigan. They'd have to go to head-to-head competition with Notre Dame beating
but they're not going to go
head-to-head
competition probably. You got to go with what team's the best. And if they're coming on, if Michigan goes out and they've blown out Penn State 42-7 and say they beat Ohio State 38-10, it's hard to ignore that. Especially if Notre Dame struggles with Syracuse. We know they're going to blow out Florida State, but they could struggle with USC. But my whole point is this. If you're going to have a national championship with only the top 4 teams, I don't think, like last year, Alabama did not belong in the Final Four. I'm sorry, but they didn't even play in the SEC championship game last year. So if you're not even playing for your conference championship,
but who won the championship last year?
It was Georgia.
Who won the championship last year?
Georgia. Oh, Alabama won the overall championship, but they didn't even win their conference. Alabama won the playoffs, but I'm sorry, they didn't belong in.
Saying they won it all and they don't deserve to be there.
No,
really, seriously, Mike.
They didn't deserve to be there. Anybody with half a brain knows that. They couldn't win their conference championship.
That may be one of the only smart decisions the NCAA's made.
Really?
Making sure if they've won the championship.
Wait a second, Steve. That's a joke.
That's the flaw. Hang on. That's the flaw of only having 4 teams in the playoffs. Is that you got a team like Alabama who maybe that's UCF. They'll never get a chance to play for it. But maybe if they were in it, they'd win it. Alabama, you're going to argue they shouldn't have been in there.
No, they
shouldn't. They turn around and win it. How can you say they don't deserve to be there?
Because they're only taking 4 teams. The top 4 teams should be in it. And they weren't one of the top 4 teams. I mean, they weren't even the best team in their conference, but yet they got in the playoffs. I don't think
they're
you
the
should
best
be allowed.
Team in the country.
No, they weren't, because they weren't even the best team in their conference. You're missing my point. My point is this. They're supposed to take the 4 best teams. Alabama was actually the 3rd best team in the SEC. Georgia beats Auburn in the SEC championship game. Why didn't Auburn get a chance to go? Because 2 weeks before, they beat Alabama handily.
See, your argument's not going to fly with me because you're talking about a guy who played on a basketball team that was 25, 26,
what the hell does
9.
that matter?
At that point in time,
wait a second. Answer this.
Time,
if they would have taken just 4 teams, would Indiana have been in it?
Yeah, because we won the Big Ten. Well, I don't know.
You wouldn't have.
We're waiting. They would have given the Big Ten. No, I would say probably we would have because at that point in time, the Big Ten.
I don't think you would have. I don't think you were considered one of the 4 best teams. What was your seed? You guys played one of the play-in games against Maryland.
Yeah, you're right. We might not have been in. But look, that's what I'm saying. But the thing is that at that point in time, until North Carolina State came 2 years later and had like a 22-12 record, we had at that point in time we were the team with the worst record ever to win a national championship at 26-9. And I know since then North Carolina State came out with Valvano and his group.
But the point is this: Steve, if you only have 4 teams, the 4 teams that would have played in 1981, if you go by rankings, were DePaul, Oregon State, Arizona State, and LSU. That would have been the 4 teams. Indiana was ranked 9th, so you'd have been left out even though you were the best team. This is kind of part of my point.
So North Carolina was
North Carolina was ranked 6th. Now, and they did not win their conference. Virginia won the conference.
Yeah,
so you had DePaul as an independent, Oregon State as the Pac-10 champion, LSU as the SEC champion, and the ACC champion, Virginia would have been there. So I'm just telling you, if you're only taking 4 teams, you can't take a team that's the 3rd best team in their conference. Because you could do that in almost any sport and get somebody to get hot and win.
But I don't know how you can say that when the team you say was the 3rd best team in their conference walks away with the national championship.
Because they were the 3rd best team, because they got beat by Auburn, which made them 2nd in their division. Georgia played Auburn in the championship game. That makes you the 3rd best team. I'm just saying the way they are doing this is stacked. It's a stacked deck. I mean, why not make the rule that out of the Big 5 or Big 6, whatever, the Big 5, only a conference champion can go? Is that so bad?
I'm processing that right now. I'm processing what you're saying right now, and that's a good argument, except for the fact of what happened last year.
It doesn't matter what happens once they get in. The fact is this: they kept a conference champion out. Correct? They kept one out. They kept an actual team that won a championship out and put in the 3rd best team in the SEC. If you're going to take 2 teams out
of
the
national championship?
Wait a second. I don't care.
Who won the national championship?
I don't care. Because the point is this: why didn't Georgia or why didn't Auburn get in? Auburn beat Alabama. Now, and remember this: Auburn beat Alabama handily. I think it was like 21-7 or something. And then Auburn, a month later, got beat up by UCF.
But isn't the concept, and again, I'm not as knowledgeable or as versed on this as you are, but isn't the concept of this playoff ranking system, it's based on a formula based on schedule strength, a bunch of variables that are supposed to be analytical and not subjective.
But they aren't, and they're still subjective. I mean, you can look at that when you watch who a lot of these teams play the first 7 or 8 games, and then they end up ranked 3rd with a strength of schedule of 59.
Well, and the more you limit the field in the playoffs, the more subjective it's going to get. The easiest answer, obviously, is to expand it to 8 or 16 teams.
Well, no kidding, but they're not going to do that because
they're not
going to help what they want to do.
I mean, but I can't follow your argument that Alabama shouldn't have been there when they walk away with the national championship when the teams all play together.
Well, I
think there's a bias.
They all play together.
There's a bias. There's a bias toward the SEC, but I don't know. Is it because does that carry more clout playing in the SEC? Because Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, Kentucky, LSU all beat up each other during back in the day when I remember playing in the Big Ten in basketball. We have so many strong teams, we just beat the crap out of each other all season long, and we didn't get the top 4 rankings. We get Oregon State. You got LSU, which was the doggest team of all 4 in the Final 4. My year. Rankings, rankings are just somebody's opinion. Somebody's opinion said Alabama should have been there.
Wait a second. I'm trying to get away from the opinions. Do you think opinions are bad? Because if they are, I do think that. So I think if you're only going to let 4 in,
by your opinion, Alabama shouldn't have gotten there.
Take champions.
By all actuality, they wanted all these.
Exactly. I don't care. I don't believe NC State was the best team in college basketball in 1983. They're having a tournament. Now, you can't have a tournament with just 4 teams. You're supposed to be playing the 4 best teams, Take 4 teams that are champions because they work.
Well, and there's probably they have 5 power conferences, don't they?
Yes.
So why are you only taking 4? Why are you eliminating a power conference?
6 power conferences, right?
6 power conferences. Okay,
Pac-12,
6. So
the ACC.
So you take. So again, it just goes back to the argument.
Maybe 5.
Take 6 power conference champions, right? Anointed champion of the power conferences.
Yeah, and then 2 wild
and then
cards.
You get 2 at-large bids. Two at-large bids.
Then you can stick the other 2 SEC teams in there and have 3 out of the 8.
Or you give Notre Dame a chance, or
Notre Dame
give
that's the
UCF.
thing, because you could take the best independent and throw them in there with it, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, then you have 1 spot left.
It needs to be much bigger than what it is.
I think right now, based on the climate in college football right now, they've got the top 4 right as of today. Now, that climate's going to change. It's not going to stay this way, likely.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is this. I think it's right, too. I think it's right, too, but I think they're setting it up to get what they want.
Well, okay, so is that a revelation? It's all about money. They don't want UCF in there.
Yeah, but they act like it's not.
They act
like, see, once again, UCF will put up bigger ratings playing Alabama than anybody else will.
I was listening to Jay Billis talk pregame last night before the Michigan State Kansas game, and they were talking about how the NCAA was born in scandal in 1909 and just gotten better at it all the way up till today. It may be one of the most scandal-ridden organizations in all of sports, period. Even worse than FIFA or FIFA.
In all of life. I don't think anything's worse
in all
than
of
FIFA,
life.
But NCAA is close.
Yeah, but it's up there. And then you got the Olympic Committee right with them, too, the World Olympic Committee. But it's like, it's no revelation that this is what's happening here. They're getting the 4 darling teams. All these guys have 100,000-seat stadiums, basically, or somewhere close to that number. They're the 4 biggest programs. Of course, that's what they want because they want TV ratings. So
see, I don't think that's what gets TV ratings. That's wrong, Steve. The reason they do this is with the bowl, all the bowl games are cash cows for NCAA. And not the organization as a whole, but the people that go and take care of those bowl games are paid off big time. Because you cannot sit here and tell me that this Final Four with the Bulls is a bigger deal than what putting the best 16 teams in a month-long tournament in December would do. There is no way that could bring in the money that a 16-team tournament could bring in. It's just the fact that they've got their hands in the pockets of all these Bulls, and they're getting paid off. So personally, they're profiting. The NCAA, I don't think, makes as much money as what you would get with a 16-team tournament. You could run a 32-team tournament and have it done in 5 weeks and get 10 times the profits you're getting right now because outside of the main 4 bowl games, nobody cares anymore. Most of these bowl games, the bowl game up in Detroit, Michigan usually has 8,000 people in it. That's it.
The Motor City Bowl?
They played in the Bahamas. Like 2,000 people there. I mean, there's crowds at high school football games much bigger than what I see at a lot of these bowl games. So there's something underlying that is keeping them from doing this. And I think number one is they want to have control of everything.
I don't think attendance is the biggest driving factor in these things. It's television.
Yeah, but television, Steve, the ratings on the bowl games are horrible, except for the 4 playoff games.
Okay, I don't. Games. I mean, I don't know that. I don't watch any of them. But then, like I said, I'm not a huge
nobody does
college football fan. I mean, I only watch teams that are bowl games of teams that I have interest in. Generally, that would be Notre Dame, and I'll watch the Final 4 playoff games. Relatively speaking, but even that, if Dancing with the Stars is on and Alabama's playing Clemson for the national championship, I'll be flipping back and forth between Dancing with the Stars and the game. So, except now because they've eliminated the one athlete that was left at Dancing with the Stars. So,
but
I think they've got it right. I think right now they've got it right. I think at this point, sitting here, I'm okay with the 4 teams. If they ended it today and said these 4 teams are going, I'm okay with that. I think Michigan's a hot team right now. They're playing good. They've got to get through Ohio State. Ohio State's now kind of been relegated to the role of spoiler. Notre Dame is, I think, the most vulnerable of the 4 teams to lose, just because I'm just not confident that Brian Kelly can get them through these final 3 games. Syracuse is dangerous. At USC is always dangerous because it's a rivalry game for them. I think Clemson's got a fairly easy road, and I think Alabama has probably the toughest road, but I think they're by far the best team. So I don't think it's even close that they're the best. They're better than 90% of the pro teams. That's not really true, but, it's always fun to say that.
But it's not true.
So, it's not true. I do think there's a better than 50% chance that you end up with 2 SEC teams in the Final Four.
Well, only if Alabama loses. So I really don't think there's much of a chance because I don't see Alabama losing to anybody.
So you don't. So what do you think happens if Alabama wins out, Clemson wins out, Notre Dame wins out, and Michigan falls to Ohio State? What happens?
Well, then if Georgia loses a close game to Alabama, then Georgia could get in.
Georgia could get in. Or they take Washington State. No, they won't take Washington State.
Washington State will not bring them the revenue that they want.
Here's the other thing, here's the other thing which I don't think you realize. I mean, maybe you do. You're a smart cookie. I get that. But West Coast teams are a bane to these people because you understand everything comes on here between 3 and 5 o'clock.
Yeah, but see, I don't think that's true.
So
if you're
yesterday
talking about
I watched
USC.
the IU game.
I think if you're talking about USC, it's not.
I watched IU play at 3:30 yesterday in the afternoon.
Yeah.
All right. So basically, now I work out of my home, do the stuff I do out of my home, so I can turn on the TV at 3:30 and watch the game. But the television market for professional sports out here has got to be a pain in the butt to everybody because you're getting games at times when you're not at peak viewing. So I think that factors into Washington State. It's like, we do that, and we're not going to get the viewership out there because people aren't going to care because they're at work or they're doing something else, or it's another beautiful 85, sunny degree day out here. You got Malibu Beach 10 miles from my house. You got the rest of the beaches 20 miles, 30 miles from the house, and people don't care about sports out here on the West Coast like they do on the East Coast. So they're going to favor East Coast teams.
Unless it's USC.
Because that's where they're, huh?
Unless it's USC.
USC's not in the mix. Right.
No, they're not in the mix, but usually
they've been in the mix for 10 years.
But what I'm saying, they were in it last year. They were like ranked 5th or 6th, weren't they? 7th, 8th, somewhere around. They were in the top 10.
Yeah, but they would have gotten dusted by everybody if they got.
Oh yeah, they proved that when Ohio State dusted them.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
Let's real quick. Let's transition to the NFL for a minute because Anthony Servino was here on Panic Monday.
Yeah, why don't you get Anthony on the phone real quick?
We need to have Anthony on the show because
you should just call him real quick. He can jump on.
Did you see his post after they got the first touchdown and he tried to throw that in my face and then he didn't post nothing the rest of the night?
Yeah.
The Dallas Cowboys are a mess. The New Orleans Saints took advantage today by signing Dez Bryant. And the reason I say they took advantage is this. I think Dez Bryant, even at an older age, would have helped the Cowboys. They'd have won a game or two more than now. They wouldn't have had to trade a number 1 pick. And Amari Cooper is not worth giving up what they gave up. And what we saw was, and I brought this up where Stephen Jones, who is, I guess, the GM, Little Jerry, we'll call him, and he made the comment of how this would open the offense up. And I'm pretty sure Jason Garrett had a directive that you need to throw the ball to what's his name?
Amari Cooper.
And they're forcing the ball to Cooper. They're turning the ball over. They got their ass smacked by the Tennessee Titans, who are not a very good team. But I think what the Titans do have that the Cowboys lack is a head coach. I think Mike Vrabel's done a good job with limited talent. Marcus Mariota, I think, is turning out to be a bust. But when you look at this, Jerry Jones has screwed this team over in Dallas since the late 90s. I mean, with his Dave Campo hiring, Chan Gailey, he did have Bill Parcells for a while. He was smart enough to get out of there quickly. And now he's got Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett has no control. This team doesn't respect him. I see all these Cowboy fans running around, oh, man, our defense is so good. Yeah, but your offensive line sucks. Dak Prescott has lost confidence.
They fired Paul Alexander. The only firing they made.
Because he was terrible.
He's the only firing they made.
Yeah,
he's their offensive line coach for those of you that are listening.
Paul Alexander knows as much about coaching offensive line as I do NASCAR, and that's almost nothing. And the thing is this. The big difference there is I don't
Thanks for the NASCAR analogy.
This is the thing. I don't care at all about NASCAR, so it's all right I don't know anything. Paul Alexander, on the other hand, is supposed to be an offensive line coach, and he knows nothing. So the big thing there is I do know is the Bengals held on to him for 25 years. The first team that got him after they finally had the sense to fire him got rid of him after 8 weeks. The Dallas Cowboys are not a playoff team. We went through their schedule. Anthony tried to convince us that Atlanta they could beat. They can't beat Atlanta. Atlanta's going to smack them in the mouth. The Cowboys will win no more than 6 or 7 games. Right now at 3-5 in the division they're in, they're still in it if they could do something to change the narrative. And instead of doing that, Jerry Jones said, I'm not making a change in the start of the season, which to me means he doesn't have another yes man readily available to take over and do his bidding, do his dirty work, and continue to run this team into basically the dumpster.
All right, can I make one statement, then I'll ask you a question? One statement is, I think you're right. I think the Cowboys have sunk to a level to where now I'm counting the Cowboys game as another win for the Colts this year.
Oh, I already was.
I mean, I'm believing the Colts are going to beat the Cowboys in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
I believe they will. Now, I didn't think that earlier. I thought, okay, geez, we're going to just get a draft pick. But right now, you know, and I'm counting, when I'm trying to figure out, can the Colts eke into the playoffs? I don't think they can. I don't know that it's smart that they do, because I think a draft pick for them is more important than going 8-8, making the playoffs.
I don't
playing
think
a road
so,
game and
because
getting
the majority of draft picks never work out anyways.
Yeah, you're right there.
Might as well make the playoffs.
You're right
take
there.
A shot with luck.
So that's my statement. That's my statement. Is that I now count the Cowboys game as a victory for the Colts when I'm plotting out my strategy for my favorite team to make the playoffs, or to finish with a 500 season, or to salvage something else. Here's my question for you: if Jerry Jones wasn't meddling and he was a non-factor in all this, is Jason Garrett a good football coach or not?
We would never know.
And why or
because
why
it's
not?
Never happened. I mean,
well,
you're
has he
basically
shown you anything that says he could be a good coach?
No, because he's not allowed to coach. It's kind of like Marvin Lewis. I don't know if Marvin Lewis would be a good head coach or not, because he's never been the head coach. Because once the players know that the owner has control of who's on the team and who's not, they're not listening to the coach anymore. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys are a joke. They're not going to win this division. If you're a Cowboys fan and you think this team could win possibly 7 games or more, well, they must have legalized marijuana in Texas. Maybe they did. I don't know. But
well, let me redirect my question then. Based on your exemplary knowledge of coaching in football, because you've coached it virtually at many levels, including professional, do you see signs and tendencies that Jason Garrett has made good coaching decisions, or has potential, or seen offensive schemes or defensive schemes or anything in there, player development that says that this guy deserves to be coach of the most valued franchise in all of professional sports?
No. There's no way he does. I mean...
All right. Then how does the biggest ego in all of professional sports keep him around? I mean, are you saying that Jerry puts control over winning?
Yeah, I think he does. And I think this.
You think he does? You really
just like Mike Brown, I think that he really knows how to win. You know? I mean, he thinks he knows more than the coaches.
So
I don't know why
he thinks he knows how to win. He doesn't know how to win, but he thinks he knows how to win, right?
Yeah. It's the same thing with Mike Brown. His dad was Paul Brown. He watched his dad win forever. You know,
right.
Jimmy Johnson or Jerry Jones played at Arkansas. He was a good football player. Played on some really good Arkansas teams. He thinks he knows more than what he knows. And the problem is this: they fired Wade Phillips November of 2010, and Jason Garrett's never going to make a pimple on an ad compared to Wade Phillips. Wade Phillips was a good football coach, and he got screwed over. And if you look at this, this is the thing that stands out to me. His career as a coach, he was the quarterback's coach for the Dolphins, 05 and 06. He was the offensive coordinator in 2007 for the Cowboys, assistant head coach and offensive coordinator for the Cowboys 2008 to 10, and then he became the head coach. It's not like it's a huge resume of success. I mean, the 2005-06 Dolphins, I don't think they had any great quarterback play there. And the 2007 Cowboys, 2008 through 10, I mean, he was brought into Dallas because he was Troy Aikman's backup. He had the big game on Thanksgiving against Green Bay in the, mid-90s, late 90s. That was basically the extent of his NFL career. He didn't really start other than a few games here or there. And he was brought in because I think he was brought in 2007 because Jerry knew, this is my yes man, this is going to be my coach. And the thing is, he's been the head coach there for like 8 or 9 years. And I mean, this is bordering on Marvin Lewis lunacy, only the fact that I think Marvin Lewis, has actually coached in a lot more playoffs. And their career record
I think it's above Marvin Lewis. Yeah, I think it's just above Marvin Lewis.
In the postseason, Steve, he's been in Dallas for 8 or 9 years. They've made the postseason twice, and they're 1-2. So he did win a playoff game, but Marvin Lewis has been in the playoffs a lot more than Jason Garrett has.
It's just hard for me to understand that Jones would make the egotistical decision to put control over winning, because the impact of the Dallas Cowboys versus the impact of the Cincinnati Bengals is a sledgehammer to a ball peen hammer.
No, the impact's the same way, though. Either you want to win or you don't, and they showed it. They don't.
Yeah, but the marketing value of the Cowboys, I mean, the Cowboys are a worldwide brand.
Yeah, but the marketing value of the Cowboys is because of Tex Schramm and Tom Landry. It's not because of Jerry Jones.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, but still, he's jeopardizing that, and I don't think the Cowboys are as marketable today as they were before Jones got the team.
Yeah, because they weren't very marketable in the 80s. I mean, if you look at the 80s,
no.
Their last playoff team, I think, was, 83? They lost in the wild card to the Rams, I think. They hadn't been in a Super Bowl since Super Bowl 13. So, no, I think when he got them, they weren't marketable. I think they'd really dropped off. Tom Landry was past his time, but the way he got Landry was repulsive. He brings in Jimmy Johnson, and him and Jimmy Johnson did great things for 5 years. And then he decided, well, I want to be the guy that gets the credit. And the problem is this. When Jimmy Johnson was there, Jimmy Johnson got the credit, which meant Jerry Jones didn't.
Right.
Jerry Jones's ego is way too big, and that is basically what killed this. Jerry Jones's ego is why Cowboy fans don't win Super Bowls, don't win divisions, and very rarely make the playoffs.
I mean, I can't disagree with you on any of that. I mean, it's fun arguing with you over it, but I think that writing's on the wall. Yeah.
All right, so let's go to the Champions Classic in Indianapolis. Zion Williamson, and if you watched the game last night, you know he's like 6'7", 285, because they repeated it constantly. Scored 28 points. R.J. Barrett, 33, and Cam Reddish, 22, as Duke scored 118 points on the University of Kentucky, basically bludgeoned them. And going into this game, you're starting 4 freshmen, and no matter how talented they are, you never know if they're going to do what they're going to do in an environment like that against an outstanding team and a great program. And they really responded last night. I got home from football practice. I watched the last 5 minutes of the first half, and that's as good as I've ever seen a team look that early in the season. And this is a Kentucky team that actually brought some guys back from last year and put a great recruiting class together, as they always do. Is Duke beatable?
I didn't look at last night. I mean, okay, you do a little bit better research than I do, because you're faster on the computer than I am. Bolden, Barrett, Jones, Reddish, are they all freshmen?
Yeah, 4 freshmen.
Okay, who's the one who's not a freshman of the starting 5?
Tell you the truth, I'm not even sure, but I think he's a sophomore.
Okay, because Barrett scores 32. Williamson
33.
scores 33. I'm sorry, 33. Williamson scores 28. I mean, yeah, you know what? Okay, Duke. I didn't watch the entire game. It got to be such a blowout, and I started watching some of the elections, and I was trying to put some stuff together for our IU show, and trying to make some notes off the IU win last night, which we'll talk about on the IU Basketball Weekly show later on this week or today, whenever we get it in. But anybody who can sit here and address this, because I love hearing you talk about this kind of stuff, anybody who can sit here and look at this and think this is a legitimately put together basketball team or college basketball team, okay, I'm just going to open the door for you there. Go off now, because you can't tell me these guys are doing this for free.
All right.
How do you possibly put a team like this together for free? I mean, seriously?
You don't. I mean, you just don't.
I'm
think sorry.
You do.
I'm an IU
Not
fan.
In this day and
I
age.
love Bobby Knight, which means that I always liked Coach Krzyzewski because, Knight and Krzyzewski were close through the 80s and the early 90s and stuff. But come on, when you look at the FBI investigation, I mean, Zion Williamson, the father of Zion Williamson, allegedly asked Kansas assistant coach Curtis Townsend for money, housing, and a job. But
yeah,
he went to Duke instead because Kansas wasn't offering anything. I'm saying that sarcastically because I'm pretty sure from everything we've seen, there's a decent chance at least that maybe Kansas offered a little something. And Coach K, the thing that stood out to me is you remember when a few weeks ago he told ESPN, I think college basketball is actually pretty clean.
Yeah, it's an anomaly.
He thinks it's minute. He thinks it's blip. It's an anomaly.
He called it an anomaly, yeah.
Yeah. Now, this is the thing. Just because Williamson's father...
Okay, let me give you one descriptor. The first time I really ever understood and heard the word anomaly was in 1984 or 5 when the Challenger blew up.
Yeah.
Okay? You remember that?
Yeah.
I remember exactly where I was watching it. I was in Connersville, Indiana, at Fayette County Memorial Hospital, in the ER, getting ready to call on a doctor, and I'm sitting there watching the ship launch, and it said, we have an anomaly. And I'm thinking, that damn ship just blew its ass out of the sky. There is crap flying everywhere, smoke everywhere. This was no anomaly. This was a massive explosion blow-up. So for Krzyzewski to come out and say, we have an anomaly right now, that's the first thing that came back to my mind was them trying to downplay the fact that the Challenger had an anomaly. It didn't have an anomaly. It had a catastrophe.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a catastrophe. For Duke to come out and play like this with 4 freshmen and a sophomore and just dismantle the perceived number 1 team in the country. I mean, Kentucky was never in this ballgame.
Yeah, it looked like Indiana, Chicago State.
It did. It had the same characteristics, and the score was not much farther off. Indiana won a little bit bigger,
and really,
I mean, this is not a normal college basketball team where you have parity in recruiting and you have kids all deciding I want to be the star of a team. I don't see that in this Duke basketball team right now. I'm sorry, I have no foundation to base this on. Because I'm sure they've got it covered or buried if they're doing it. But holy cow! I mean, this has gone over the top in terms of putting together a college basketball team now and saying they're amateurs.
Yeah,
I think this crossed the line last night.
Well,
this Duke basketball team is not a bunch of amateurs playing basketball.
No, they're the 6th seed in the East right now. When I look at this, now just because Williams' father allegedly asked a Kansas assistant for money, Doesn't mean he got money from Duke. But it is extremely hard to believe Coach K when he says he's unaware and unaffected by corruption throughout college basketball. Now, Coach K, of course, is the NCAA's white knight, the face of the sport, the head of one of the NCAA biggest moneymakers, Duke basketball. And there's been a lot of smoke around this program for a long time. There's never been a fire. And this isn't to say, I'm not saying Coach K is a cheater. I think it's just hard to approach his blissful ignorance of the game, within the game, with anything but total skepticism.
Yeah, I mean, I've got skepticism after last night. I mean, I just find it hard to believe. You got some kids on this basketball team who are going to drop in the NBA draft just because they're playing with kids like Barrett and Williamson. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Again, I have no foundation or claim to base on where I can see anything, but this is unlike any other college basketball team I've ever seen put together after what they did to Kentucky. Maybe Kentucky was a little bit overrated. Maybe they're grossly overrated. I don't know. But this was, like I said, this was very similar to IU Chicago State.
Well,
only
this is the thing. Real quick,
level.
We're having some technical difficulties, so we're going to wrap this up. We're getting a little static in the back. But I want to point this out. The recruiting guru for Duke is Jeff Capel. He was hired in 2011 at Duke after leaving Oklahoma. He left Oklahoma because he was fired because Oklahoma was paying one of their players. An assistant coach who knew about it basically, told on him, but Capel weaseled his way out without any punishment. This is my final comment before we wrap it up. Do you really think kids are sitting around saying, I want to play for this 70-year-old man? Other evidence with them, like the Capel thing, is more concrete and makes sense. Almost too much sense. Right after the FBI revealed college basketball's pay-for-play scheme, a private institution that isn't subject to Federal Information Act. See, that's the thing. They're not a state school. They're a private institution.
Right. No, they're not. Yeah,
now they aren't subject to the Freedom of Information Act. So they don't have to worry about those requests. Now, after that happens the next year, they've got all the country's best players. All of those players were recruited by a guy in Capel who left his old job because of a pay-for-play scandal. So, I don't know. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's so much smoke here, it looks like L.A. in August.
Yeah, there's a lot of smoke with this basketball team right now. I'd say it's they're drawing attention to themselves in a way that I think at this point in time, it's not an anomaly. What Krzyzewski said, the whole scandal or the whole pay-for-play thing going on in college basketball right now. I don't know that I'd be drawing as much attention to myself by putting a team like this on the court and going out and drilling the number one ranked team in the country by some 40 points, 44 points, 34 points.
All right.
I'll say this on the last thing. Last thing I'll just add, we'll pick this up because we want to talk later on this week about the kind of putting closure on the trial that happened in New York over the Adidas shoe instance and what's finalized over that. To me, this just says we've got to get to a situation where there's some compensation for athletes in play to try and minimize this and take this out of the hands of speculation and just say, here's our W-2s, here's our 1099s, here's our whatever. We do compensate players. They do get profit sharing. And somehow the NCAA is going to just have to say, otherwise you're going to have this smoke and fire mentality from now on because it's out there now. I mean, Self is basically just incriminated. How he's even still coaching. I know they held out their number one player, their recruit, last night and won't let him play because now they're trying to decide what kind of sanctions are going to come against Kansas. And they're trying to be proactive about it now, but it's too little too late in my book. But somewhere down the road, and we'll pick this up on another show because I know you got to get off.
It's just right now we've got major static and people can't really hear you.
I hear you fine.
I know, but the problem is the recording thing doesn't. So
we're
going to go ahead and wrap it up. We're going to come back and talk about this tomorrow. because I love talking about Duke basketball and the white knight of Mike Krzyzewski.
And NASCAR.
Yeah, and
NASCAR.
yeah, we're going to talk about NASCAR too. All right, guys. Remember, you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever you find sports podcasts. You'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.